Schedule data is notoriously difficult to visualize in Microsoft Power BI, but don't worry, because today I'm going to be showing you how to do it. If you like tutorials like this, where I show you how to build a project from end to end, please subscribe. And if you end up liking the tutorial, or if you have any questions, let me know in the comments or with a like. If you're interested in following along with me while I work, I have both the final version of this Power BI file as well as the data files linked in the GitHub in the description down below. I hope you enjoy. Let's jump in. All right, the first thing that you need is you need some data to build a Power BI report. I've gone ahead and I've pulled some data for you. So I have created a date dimension file, an employees dimension file, a location dimension file, a schedule fact dimension file, and a shift dimension file. In this case, I didn't actually pull it. I really just generated it with Python, but it should be good to go, and I'll include it linked down in the description. All right, so let's open up a new Power BI file. So I right-clicked there, and then I opened up Power BI. I'm now going to click Blank Report. The first thing that I like to do when I have a nice new shiny report like this is actually load that data in. So because this is all in CSVs, it should be pretty quick. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go get data, and then I'm going to go text and CSV. I'm going to load in the date dimension data. Give it a second. I'll go load. I'm going to load in. And you're going to have to bear with me on this one because it's going to be some waiting. I'll cut where necessary, but I want you guys to see that I'm actually like loading in the data here. So I'm going to load in my employee data. I'm going to load in my locations data. As you can see here, we have a location. I'm going to load in my schedule data. And then I'm going to load in my shift data here. And this is going to be my larger file right here. Okay, so let's take a look at what this data looks like. So we have a date table, right? We have our employee dimensions table. We have our locations dimensions table. We have our schedule fact table, which is a ton of different data, as well as the foreign keys for all the dimensions tables. And then we have our shift dimension data right here. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change these to short dates. Something Power BI always does that I don't like is it changes them to long dates. So I'll change this to short date right here. Next, on our date table, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to unselect this column, I'm going to go to Table Tools, I'm going to mark it as a date table, and I'm going to tell it that it's date. This will change the way Power BI treats the table in the data model. And so if you have a date table, just go ahead and mark it as a date table. It'll go ahead and help. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at how it did it's the model. So Power BI will do its best to configure a model if you have ID columns and going through. This is a star schema model, which is what Power BI really loves from a performance standpoint. So what is a star schema? A star schema essentially is like if you have like a 5-point star, or in this case a 4-point star, it's that you have kind of all of your edges, right? And it forms a star. So like here's an edge, here's an edge, here's an edge, here's an edge. Okay. So and here and all of our relationships here, if we double click them, are all many to one because our fact table has many and our dimension table has one. So this is our data model. And it's a very pretty data model. You know, there might be a little bit more data wrangling involved if we weren't using data that I created, but in this case, we have it all nicely laid out. The next thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create a place for us to store measures. So we're going to have two different types of measures that we're going to use in this report. The first are going to be measures that are just purely related to the design of the report, and the other are going to be measures that are going to be used for analysis. So we're going to create two different tables to store those measures in. Now, you don't have to create a measures table when you are using Power BI, but it's a best practice and it'll keep your data model clean. So let's go back over to here and let's go more. So I click get data. Well, actually, I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to go transform data, sorry. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go enter data. And I'm going to just give this a random column name. I'm going to click OK. And actually, I'm going to go back into the source here. I'm going to name this, just give it a value of 1. And I am going to duplicate this. And I'm going to call this port measures. I'm going to call this analysis measures. Okay. Now, we first need to get a measure in there so that way when we actually are building out this, we'll have a measure. But before that, I have played around with some sample data. This is typically probably what I want the report to look like, right? And the way I built this was I just kind of put some data in Excel, like only 1 row's worth of data, and I used calculated columns, and I figured out the way I want the report to look. So this is kind of where we're heading, right, from a build standpoint. So what kind of measures do we actually need to create here? So let's kind of understand our data. We will need a formatting measure, right, to tell Power BI, like, hey, we want to fill this. We'll need an hours measure, which is like the total number of shift hours, right? And we'll probably need a formatting measure over here for this visual right here, but we won't get into that right now. So right now, I just see kind of two measures that we need to create. So let's jump into creating those measures. So the first measure is going to be a sum of the shift. So let's go shift, and we'll call this scheduled, or we'll call this shift hours, right? Because this is not going to be scheduled, this is going to be summing on the shift dimension data. So we'll go shift dimension data on hours. So what this means is that if you have all of the shifts in a table, and you drag this measure in, it'll show 1 hour. So let's just show that that's what's actually happening. So I'm just going to insert a table visual right here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into our shifts dimensions data. I'm going to bring in our shift name, I believe, right here. And then I'll bring in the measure we just created. As you can see, it's now summing up. So it's now 1 hour. All right, I'm going to delete this visual. Okay, so that's our first measure. Our next measure that we need is our formatting measure, which is essentially we need to create a formatting measure that if the shift contains 1 worked hour, it'll return 1 hex color code, and if it returns another hour, it will return kind of blank, right? So what is a hex color code? Well, if you don't know, a hex color code is a way of talking about color on the internet. If you just Google hex color code right here, you can pick them up and you can pick them right here, and here's the hex code ID. In this report, I'm going with like a pink theme just because I think it's fun. So I've gone ahead and I've created like a really fun pink color that you can see kind of right over here. So let's go ahead and let's create that measure. So and this measure I'm going to put in my report measures section. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go new measure. If you notice, it tried to put it in the analysis measures, but we're going to move this into the report measure. I'm going to go if, and I will go count of, for now, I'll just actually have to just return my pink color. We won't get into the logic. We will need to do that, but for now, I'll just have to return this pink color. And I'll have title this shift block color. Okay, so right now it's set just to return a pink measure, and I will go ahead and I will move this into the report measures. Okay, So now you might notice we have this ugly one. Let's go ahead and let's fix that. So I'm going to go back over here and go edit query, and I am going to delete this and delete this. All right. So the reason why we couldn't do this before is because a table object in Power BI always needs to have at least one thing in it. Now that they both have assigned measures, we can get rid of the columns we're not using, and they can just be measure columns. So like, for example, if we go right over here, we now have report measures, shift block color. We now have analysis measures, shift colors right here. Okay, so let's kind of start loosely designing this. So we're going to have a header icon up here, or like kind of a header block right here. We're going to have some filters over to the side, and then we're going to have our schedule right in the middle. So what I'm going to do to create our header is I am going to insert in a shape. And we might fiddle with this a little bit throughout the video, but I'm going to go over here to insert, and I'm going to go into shapes. And I will go right here, and here's my shape, right? And I will kind of have this be the nice header up top. Then I'm going to go over here to format. I'm going to go over here to size and style, and I'm going to search fill here. If you notice, you can use an FX here. I'm going to have that FX go right here. I'm going to go field value, and I am going to, actually, I'm going to create a new measure here. I'm going to just copy this same measure. I'm going to go new measure, and I'm going to go just title this pink color. So that way I don't have to go and like reselect this every single time. So I now have pink color. If I now select here, I now go FX, base this on, and I'll say field value, and I'll go into report measures, and I'll go pink color. So now here this is, it's a nice pink. I'm going to turn off our border. Right, so I'm going to select right here, and I'm going to turn off our border. Okay, so we now have a nice pink bar. The final thing I like to do on shapes is I like to go into header icons. Okay, good. There aren't any. All right, then we need to add in just kind of like a white rounded corner shape for the actual title to go on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to search for shapes. So I just copied and pasted this, and I've got two of the same. I'm going to leave this as rectangle, and I'm going to increase the rounded corners to like 10 or 11. Decrease the size a little bit here, and that's not quite right, like small enough. So we'll go here. We'll go back here, and we'll go fill, and we'll fill it with white. So we'll clear that, and we'll go right here, and we'll just fill it with white. All right, so now there we are. We now have a nice little like header icon in this kind of shape. I don't really have a logo for this business, right? Because it's a fake business that we're making a schedule for. So I'm gonna now use a little circle. So, I find that circle to be kind of a fun placeholder for some of these stuff. Oof, that is not a circle. So I will delete out that, and I will go shapes again. Oh, okay. We'll go back over here to shape style, and we will fill this with the same pink color. So this is where you're kind of doing using the measures to contain. So we'll go back over here, and I'll go pink color, and then I will go border right here, and then I will go shape, and we'll see if we can get this into an actual circle. Okay, it looks like they just have oval here. So we will have to do our best to get this into an actual circle. So right here. And one of the things that's actually probably an easier way to do this is probably just to do a size and style. So I'll go set it to 150 and 150 here. And there's a circle, right? I should have done that in the beginning. And I'll line this right here in the middle. Okay. And then I will finally insert in a text box right here. And I will title this weekly schedule. Okay. And let's go and we'll make this Sekio bold. I like that. And then I like, if we kind of go back over here, we said that's 96, so that's a little too big. 72. And I just like to stick with the Microsoft fonts, right? Some people are going to tell you that you should play with fonts. And I mean, if you have a company font with a theme and it's, you have these various things, sure, go ahead. But the thing is Microsoft has spent a lot of money designing fonts, so they're nice and easy to read. Chances are, unless you're like a serious graphic designer, you're not going to be able to do a better job. So, just kind of stick to a theme, make the headers all bold, and it'll end up okay. So we'll align that right here. And so here we are, we have kind of our weekly schedule report, and that's actually looking a little too bold. So let's maybe dial this back. Let's go Segio UI, but then go bold there. Yeah, that's like a little too black for me. So like, this is the kind of thing that you can kind of fiddle with a fair amount. Maybe, do you want to know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go into more colors, and I'm going to select like a darker pink. Probably, maybe. Could be kind of fun. Okay, so let's go back and let's get that same color hex. So, and this is where hex codes are fun, right? So I'm going to go in here, select everything, more colors. I'm going to paste that hex code in, and then I'm going to go darker and more towards gray, right? So I kind of like that. Maybe we'll go a little bit darker, right? And so like this is a way to kind of like get a good feel for this color, right? So like now we've got a nice brown. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this hex color so that way I don't need to go click back in, right? So I'll go and I'll create another measure. I'll go new measure and I'll title this text color. I'll save that hex right there. Okay. So and then one thing I'm going to do right here is I'm going to add these into a folder so they get nice and modified. So I'll go back over here into modeling view, and I will put them in a folder called colors. Okay, so I'll go here, and I will go back over here, display folder colors. If we go over here, you'll notice that they're starting. Oh no, I did it in analysis measures. Okay, so we need to go back, so I'll exit out of that. I'll go back into report measures, right? And I'll go pink color, colors here, and colors here. Now, this kind of organization is the kind of stuff that, no one will see if you're like just showing them a screenshot of the report. But it is the kind of stuff that if you ever gave someone else the file, and you could speak to it, it's something that would impress like a hiring manager. The other piece of this, other than organizing the measures, is going to be we're going to want to actually retitle and organize our stuff in the selections pane. So the selections pane, if we control click over here, we could see currently it doesn't really have any shape. So I'm going to select this one, which is the back right here. I'm going to title this pink box. The next one up should be the white rounded rectangle. So I'm going to go white rounded rectangle. This should be the circle icon, so I'll go circle icon. And then this right here should be my header text, so I'll go header text. Okay, then I'm going to group all these together by control clicking all of them, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go group, and then group right here, and I'm going to title this group header There we go. I now have a nice group, and one thing I just noticed is I still have the border on here, so I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to go border, and maybe I don't have the border on. Okay, no, I don't. All right, that was a visual trick. I got tricked there. Okay, so here we are. We now have this nice kind of layout. Okay, the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to kind of set like a really nice like pink background, and then kind of do some small shapes right here. So how I'm gonna do that is I am going to select in the pane right here, and I'm gonna search for background, right? And right now our background is a color. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna select this as the canvas background, and then I believe that should have set. Oh, our transparency is set to 100%. So I will decrease that down. Now this is probably a little dark, so I'm going to go a little lighter up here. Right, I want this to be as light as possible. So there we go. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm then going to go ahead and I'm then going to insert in some background shapes again. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to insert in a shape right here. And this first shape is going to be a rounded rectangle. So I will go ahead and I will make this here, and this is where I'm going to maintain my filters. So I'll move this over, and then finally I'll make one for my schedule. Same thing. I'll go ahead and bring this over. Now these are probably looking pretty raggedy, so I am going to go ahead. I'm going to change their fill. So I'm going to search for fill. And I'm going to go and I'm going to turn this to white, and then I'm going to go right here and I'm going to search for background or border. And I'm going to turn the border white right here. I'm going to do the same thing right here. I'm going to go border white, right? And then I'm going to go in here and fill, and I'm going to search this as white. Okay, now you might notice these are really curved, so I'm going to adjust that. So I'm going to go round, or I'm going to go shape, right? And here it is, it's at 25%. We're going to decrease that down to like 5. Like we want a really subtle rounding. We don't want like a hardcore rounding here. So let's again go down to 5 right here. Let's see how that looks. Now, interesting thing about shapes, right? And I'm going to zoom in because this is probably a little pale, so you probably have a little trouble seeing this. So these are both 5%, but because this shape over here is a lot bigger, 5% is a lot more of a round for it. So in order to get them to match, right, I'm going to go probably 3. No, 3 right there. So I think 3 should match between these two. So if you notice now, a 3% over here matches a 5% over here. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rename these correctly. So I'm going to rename this as filters background. I'm going to rename this as schedules background. Okay, then I'm going to go in right here and I'm going to take this same text box because we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. And now that I have you, or have it, I'm going to then move it right over here. And I'm going to go back in here and we're going to title this, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I wanted to keep the color. I'm going to title this filters, right? And we're going to make this be a much smaller thing. And actually, do you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to title this slicers instead. That's really what they are. The filters are the filters that are over here in the pane. So I'll go slicers. And we'll go down to like 16 font probably. I think it's probably about right. Yeah. Okay. So we will now go back over. I'm going to zoom back out here. And if we now go and we should be able to resize this text box. So we'll get this nice so now we're going to need to do the same thing. So we will go back over here, and we're going to rename this from headers text to slicer title. All right, and we will copy and paste this, and I just recopied headers text. So we'll go right here, we'll copy and paste. We'll title this, and we'll keep it nice and aligned. And we'll title this schedule. Okay, and we will go ahead and we will expand this out so it is nice and pretty. All right, so now this is no longer slicer title, this is now schedule title. Okay, and we will go and we'll bring the schedule title so it's next here. And we'll go and we'll group this and we'll title this schedule. And then we will go here and group here. And we will title this. We'll go ahead and we'll title this slicers. And then we'll do one more group. And we'll title this background boxes. Okay, so now we have this whole thing where we can select in one spot and we can move all of our stuff and we can get it nice and centered. There we go. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Let's zoom out a little bit. And if you notice, I've got a lot of stuff selected, so I'll go ahead and I'll select over here. Come on. And we'll just confirm that I don't have background on, even though I think this is kind of the same thing that I was dealing with. So we'll just go back over here and we'll search for border. Nope, there's no border. All right, so I think we're probably good. And then I'll go back over here and I'll search for border over here. Okay, there's no border over here. Okay, so there we are. So let's take a look and let's zoom out here at our schedules report. What you can now see is we now have a nice kind of place for us to actually go ahead and start building in our slicers. So the first slicers we're going to put in, or really all of the slicers that we're going to put in, are going to be, well, actually we're going to put in year slicers, month, a calendar picker, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to put in a person slicer and a location slicer. So let's go ahead and let's quickly build those. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go new visual. And first I'm going to go and I'm going to make this kind of small, right? Because why bother? And I'll go here and I will expand my data model and I will bring over the location name, which should be in our location database. So I'll bring this over here. And I will then go into the formatting pane and I will change the format. So if we go style right here and we go all the way down, we can change this to a drop down. So if you notice its name, so we'll go and we'll rename this to location. Okay, so now one thing, this is just kind of the fun little bit, but you want to make sure all of your colors are nice. So let's go and let's change these. So we'll go back into field value, colors. We'll change this to a text color, right? And you'll see this is the kind of stuff that, and we'll do the same for the border. This is the kind of stuff that for just kind of makes the report extra nice, right? And then we'll go into selection right here and we'll have slicers and we'll rename this to location slicer. The only other thing I'm going to want to turn on here is search, so that way if someone goes in right here, they can search for Balboa Park, right, and it'll come up. Okay, so let's go ahead and, and then I'm also going to turn off the header icons because you don't need to know what kind of filters are on, so all those are off. Okay, so I'll bring this up, and I will get this nice and tight. Okay, there we go. So then I will go down right here, and I just duplicate this, and I will create one for employee. So I'll go back over here, and I will go and I will add in an employee name, and I will rename this to employee. Right, and so now we have our location, we have our employee. Okay, and over here I will rename this to employee slicer. Right. Okay. And then I will go down and we will kind of continue through this. So now we need to add some date slicers. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to bring in year. So I'll search for year over here. So there we go, right? Because we're going to have a year on our weekly schedule. Because why not? And we don't need to see these filter icons. So I'm kind of building this, right? So if we go bring this over. All right, and let's title this year slicer right over here. And then we'll do it one more time for month, right? And we'll go right over here and we'll search for month. All right, and we'll go in and we'll bring in month name. Right here. And we'll title this month. Okay, so now we should have a fair number of our slicers built. Okay, one of the things you might be noticing is these are a little longer than our box, so I will go ahead and I will shrink all these just quickly, just they all are nice and aligned in our box. Okay, and if you notice, these are now looking nice and aligned, right? They're all the same size. Okay. And one of the ways you could do that is you could go back over here into, like if you had one of these selected, you can go into the format and you can use these align tools right here. And then you can also more specifically set the size. And I just realized I didn't update this, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to update this to month slicer. Okay, so one of the funner things I want to do with this dashboard, and I say fun, is I want to create kind of buttons. So these buttons allow me to actually go through and select a week, right? So I'm going to use the new button slicer. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert in this right here, and I'm going to bring over my week number, okay? I'm going to bring that over here into the field. And what you might notice now is that, oh, that's week day number, sorry. I'm going to bring over a week number. And if you notice right here, right, this is displaying more weeks than there are in the month. So I'm going to edit that a little bit. So I'm going to go into rows, and I'm going to say you can show up to 7. Well, I'm going to say you can show 4 rows, so 1 for each week, right? And then I'm going to go columns. I'm going to say you can show 1 column. Right, so here we are, we now have this. Now one of the things, if you go ahead and you open up, for example, a calendar, you might notice that the calendar is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows right here. So let's go ahead and let's fix that. And that's because some weeks might have more than other weeks in terms of the columns. So we can go ahead and we'll go back over to rows. We'll go over to 6. Okay, so we now have right here, right, a nice, fun week number slicer. So let's get this nice and centered, and we'll retitle this away from week number. We'll retitle this week. Okay. Now, in the example that I showed you, you might have noticed instead of, I was planning to use some really fun squares. So the way I can make those squares is by using something called SVG icons. Okay, so Power BI can render images if they are in a specific format. SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. If you don't know, and one thing, I just noticed the header icons are on for this one, so I'm going to turn that off. If you don't know what scalable vector graphics are, they essentially are a type of graphic. First, I'm going to go ahead and create a measure that's going to contain that graphic. So I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to go New Measure, right? And I am going to bring in my scalable vector graphic here. So the graphic that I want to build is a bunch of squares. So I'm going to use something called DAX or use variables in DAX. If you're not familiar with this, you can declare variables in DAX, and you can actually have multiple variable contexts. But right now, I'm just going to title this square. Okay. In Power BI, whenever you're building an image, always needs this first part, and then right here, this SVG and XML dictates the image format. Okay. The next part I'm going to give it is the actual like SVG itself. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to title this SVG string. Finally, I'm going to make a string that's going to be, or variable, it's going to be the full image URL that Power BI needs. So I'm going to title this full image URL. I am going to go start string, and then I'm going to go plus SVG string. And this is going to be what I'm going to want to return. So I will go right here and I'll go return full image URL. And if you're not familiar with this, I do have like a whole series on Power BI basics that if you go to my channel, you can play. I think it's at 48 videos right now. So that's a good starting point. Okay, and we'll go right here. All right, so this will currently return nothing. But if I now go over here and I should be able to categorize this. So I should be able to first put it in my report measures over here, and then I should be able to categorize it as a image URL. So right now it's only wanting to give me latitude and longitude, but I will go ahead and I will bring in some SVG stuff. So here I am, I'm copying in some SVG from another report, but don't worry, we're going to go through it. So I'm going to go back over to my measure. I'm going to go back over to the square, and I'm going to paste this in. And I'll put this quotes right here. And it's not going to like this because I have some variables in here. Now, I'm going to just reference in that one of the colors, all right? And so this is why it's important to bring in kind of colors. I'm going to bring in pink color right here. I'm going to replace all of these variables. So I'll go ahead and I'll title this pink color, right? And what this should do is this now should return. I now should have, why do you not want to give me the ability here to return this as an actual, oh, it's because I haven't set the format to text. No, that is apparently not. So I now have my SVG image URL, my start string, my full image, and I am now returning this. All right, give me 1 second to figure out why you are not wanting, Power BI is not wanting me to allow this to be set to an image URL. So if I click checkbox right there, the format of this should be text. Why are you not letting me set and return this? So you've got images right here. Let me go ahead and just copy this back over, and I'm going to get rid of this message. I'm going to go new measure. I'm going to go new measure, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set this right here. And it's going to go text, and it'll let me set this one to image URL. So So I'll go right there, and then I will update this with that, and we will see. And it did not like that. Why not? Bum 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 bum. Okay, so we are returning. Let's just try right now returning instead of full image URL. Let's just return start SVG string. And let's go right here. Okay, so it's recognizing that as text. Oh, it's because I'm using this plus icon right here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this. And this is some good troubleshooting for you guys to see, right? I used a plus instead of an ampersand. So if I go ahead and I go right here, and it now is text, and I can now categorize this as an image URL. Which now means that if I go in and I insert in a visual, so if I go over here and I go insert, and I insert in a matrix, right? And I go and I bring in a row. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to bring in employee name, rows. I now bring in my square measure right here as values. It will struggle to render the image apparently. Is that because one of you should? Okay, so let's go and let's look at those details. I cannot of type text to type number. You should not have to convert it to a type number. And that's because I have not, for whatever reason, it didn't save. So I'll go ahead and I'll update this. Square. Okay, and then I'll change this to an image URL. And so, okay, there we go. So what you can now see, right, is we now have all of our nice squares, nice and represented. So in the new image, in the new button slicer, you can go ahead and you can create some images. So I'm going to rename this to weekly squares. Okay. And I'm going to go and I'm going to get rid of this measure right here because this is the other one that we were using. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this from the model. Okay. So now if I go over here and I go and I search for image, what you can actually do is you can add in a field image. So if I add this in, we now have that field image added in. And I'm going to have it be at the left right here. So if you notice, there's my weekly squares. They're now popping up. I am then going to get rid of the week icons. Well, actually, I won't do that right now. But I will go back over into my image. And I will go ahead and I will increase the image size right here to 100%. And I will change this to fill. Okay. And then what we need to do, and I am going to turn off the text. So I will search for value, right? And I will turn off values. And so here we now have our nice, pretty squares. I don't love the border here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off that border. So I'm going to go right here, border. If you notice, we now have our nice squares coming through. Okay, so how do we format these in a month? Well, so if I go through and I select April, right, and then I select 2023, okay, right now we have our stuff. And actually, these images, right, so the fill is making it stretch. I'm going to go back into the image, and I'm going to change it away from a fill to a fit, right? And so there we go. Now we've got some nice squares coming through. Okay, so now we need to actually get it to go ahead, and we need to get it to format kind of like the format these squares when you select them, and we need them to change color with the week. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's go edit in our weekly squares SVG, right? And first things first, we're going to identify what the selected week was, so we can actually figure out what the days that are included are. So let's go in here, and I'm going to go var, I'm going to go selected week, and I'm going to go equals, and I'll just go selected value, and then from our date dimension table, I will go week number. Okay, I'll close that. And then I'll go Alt Enter here, and I'll go and I'll title this selected year, and I'll go selected value one more time, and I will go date dimension data year. Okay, then what I need to be able to do is I then need to be able to get the days in this week, right, that's selected. So I will create a var days, and I will go equals, and I'll go select columns, okay, because I'm going to return a table. So this is a table expression, and I'm going to go filter, and I'm going to go date dimension data, right, and I'm going to go week number equals selected week, and I will go and year equals selected year. Okay, and I will go right there, and then I will create a column named day, and I will return in the weekday number, and I'll concatenate that with a dash, and then I'll return the week number. I forgot my ampersand one more time there. Week number. I'll close this. Okay. So now I need to be able to actually like change the formatting here. So, or like do something with it. So like if the day is in the week, I need to be able to change the color. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna create some what I'm gonna call I'm gonna create if statements to essentially change the color if the day is in the given week. So I'm gonna go var, I'll go Sunday, I'll go if, and actually I need my equals here. I'll go if, I will go -1, because Sunday is always going to be the first day of the week. And I'll go here, and I'll go selected week in days, right, because it's a table expression. Then I will return my pink color, else I will return my text color, which is that gray. Okay. And I will go and I will update right here the first rectangle, which is supposed to be represented as Sunday, right here to Sunday. What we now should see is, look, see, it now changed. All right, so that pink color, or that text color is a little too dark for me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to update it to like a lighter gray here. And I'm going to save this light gray color too in another measure just so we can be kind of nice here. So I will go insert or modeling, and I will go new measure, and I will title this gray color equals right here. And I will go into my modeling view, and I will go update this as it should belong in report measures. And then, or sorry, it wasn't in modeling view. Now I'll go into modeling view, and I will go display color as colors. There we go. Okay, so now we have that light gray that we can use, and if we go back into this measure, right, we can kind of continue on, and I will update this instead to use the gray color. Okay, all right, so now we need to kind of continue moving on through this. So we need to do the same for the next 6 days of the week. So, and I just hit enter, so we'll go Alt-1, Alt-2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll change this to Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay, so right now we now need to go 2, 3, 4, go through and we will update these right away from that pink color. And what you should now see, right, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, and then we'll go Wednesday, Thursday, one more, two more, right, Friday, and Saturday. And what you'll see is that now we should be getting our nice pretty calendar selection. Now we have a few other things to kind of fix, and I just noticed that my image is over this, so I will move myself in the middle. So we have a few other things to kind of fix right here, right? So the first thing is we need to kind of update some of this. So we need to make it a little bit, kind of give it a little bit more oomph. The other thing is that if I select multiple months, right, all the days are included, or like let's just say I select April, right? Like it just turns them all pink, right? So if I go right here and I control click this, right, now they're all gray. Like this is not good. So we need to change these measures right here to single select. So I'm gonna highlight them and I'm gonna title this turn on single select right here, and I'm gonna turn on single select right here. So what that means is you can only have one value selected and you can only have 1 month selected at a time, which will ensure that as we kind of go through this, it'll actually go ahead and it will work. Okay. The next thing we need to do is we need to go back and we need to update some formatting things on here. So first, our week is way too big. So I'm going to turn off, or I'm going to shrink probably the title. So I'm going to change the text color using our handy dandy colors measure. So I'm going to title this to text color. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shrink this way down. Go up a little. So, because we want it to be smaller than our slicers, right? So we'll go down one. So now that it's at 11, now when we go over this, it now looks nice and pretty. Okay, so now let's go back. I just zoomed way out and now it's zoomed way in. So let's go back to 100%. Right, we can now start to see this kind of coming through. However, we now don't know what each one of these represents. So we now need to go make a tooltip that shows the dates that are actually included. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to create a measure. So we're going to go min right here, and we'll go selected values, or we'll go, so we need to get the start of the week, and we need to get the max of the week. So let's kind of think through how to do that in this context. So let's go ahead and we're going to just insert in a nice table, right? And we're going to bring over a few of our date columns. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into the date dimension table and I'm going to bring over date. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring over week number. Okay. So now in this context, we now need to get the earliest and the largest date. So if I go right over here and I just make this week number, and I then go and I go get data or create a new measure and I title this early date, and I go min and I go of date dimension date, right? And I now bring this over. So this now should be, and I'll format this as a short string really quick. Right, this should now be the earliest date in these weeks. Now, what happens if I select this and I do the same with the max? So let's go ahead and let's copy this measure and let's go ahead and let's create a new measure. So I'm going to select here, and I'm going to go New Measure. I'll title this Late Date, and I'll change this to a max. All right. And now if we bring this in, what you'll see is we now get kind of the same thing. We'll have to go through and we'll have to format it. So we'll select it right here, and we'll change it right here. Okay. So that's looking right. So 1-1 through 1-6, right, is the first part that's associated with week 1, right? So the pink to here, and then so on and so forth. But so I think that's looking pretty good, actually. So let's go ahead and let's update this. So one of the things I want people to know is I want to know when they roll over this, I want to know the dates that they're selecting. So the way we can do that is by creating a tooltip. Okay. So in a tooltip, what we can do is we can concatenate a string, right? And then we can return that string. So here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go New Measure, and I'm going to title this New Measure Date Range. Okay. And I'm going to go early date, and I'll go in here, and I'll go right here, and I'll go late date, and I'll go right here. So now if I bring in this date range right here, I now have the date range for the days that I am selecting. Okay, so that's looking pretty good if we start to look at this, right? And and here's kind of a fun one. So if I go exit out of this, and if I go back over here, and I go to February, right, and then I select this week, right here, oof, we gotta fix that. Okay, but if I select this week, right, here's now this date range is now updated. Now, I don't necessarily want this to influence this, because I just want to be able to select this week number. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna go into my edit interactions, and I am going to turn it off for here. And so what you can now see is I am now selecting dates that are outside of February, right? So if I now go back to January here, and we'll unselect this, and if I now go back to January right here, this is the only one that's still going to be a little wonky, but if I go back over here, right, I'm now 128 through 23. Okay, so that's going to allow us to do our tooltip. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to insert in a page right here, and I'm going to title it tooltip. I'll title it date tooltip. Okay, and I will go into page information, and I will change it to a tooltip type page, and I will have it display the date range right here. Well, actually, I will have it display on week number. Sorry, week number right here. When we is used as a category, and then I will insert in a visual, and I'll just insert in the new card visual right here, and I will go and I will title this as date range right here. And we need to adjust those values, so the value size is way too big, right? Here we go. We can now see the date range, and we don't need this that big, so I'll go back over here, and I will change the size, right? So the size, canvas size, is what we need to adjust here. So if we go into canvas settings, we can go custom, and we can change our height way down, right? So let's change this to maybe 150. Still too big, so let's change this to 140, 110. Yeah, that's starting to look good. And then we'll center that, and we'll change it. Go back in, and we will change the width down. Right, you don't, with these kind of tooltips, you don't want it to be overly overly large. Okay, and then we'll go back into the card and we'll just change the border. We'll turn that off. Okay, so if we now go ahead and we hide this just so it won't be visible in the report, and if we roll over each one of these, we'll need to turn on tooltips. So we will select this right here, and we'll go tooltips, and we'll go ahead, we'll turn that on. And if we expand this, what you'll notice is we can now go report page, and we'll set it to date tooltip. So now if someone is rolling over this, right, they get, and they know what dates they are selecting. Okay, one of the things I don't like though is that we are getting a border here. So I'm going to turn this to 100% transparency. And there we are. Now this is starting to look a lot better. Let's go fix that ugly selection. Okay, so what we now need to do in order to kind of fix that is we now need to go and we need to adjust the settings here. So we're going to close out of size and style. We're going to close out of title. We're going to go into go down into call out values. Okay, we're going to go through and we're going to go to selected right here, and that's not fixing it. So I'm now going to go down to buttons, and I'm now going to go down to selected right here, and I am going to absolutely turn off that fill. And so now if we roll over these, we aren't getting anything. On press, we don't have anything turned on. On hover, on default, we don't have anything turned on. All right, so that is probably looking a lot better. So now we can go back into our settings right here. Okay, so now let's expand our images, and we can also apply some of these same settings to our images. So I'm going to actually turn the saturation down by default on these. They now look kind of gray. And then when someone rolls over them, so like hovers, I'm going to have the saturation turned up. So like when you roll over, right? See, that's what's providing the now date range. And then I'm going to have when someone actually like pushes, I'm going to have it blur out, right? And well, maybe that blur was a little intense. So we'll set this to blur 50. And then when it's selected, I'm going to have it be set to 100% transparency. See? Kind of a fun effect, right? And we can see how it's now kind of changing our interactions here. All right, so also that blur just it's a little too much for me, so I'm gonna turn saturation up a little bit, turn blur down. Okay, all right, so we now have our slicer panel built. Now let's just make sure we're gonna do some organizing. So we don't need this table anymore, so we'll go ahead and we'll delete that out. We have our month slicer, our year slicer, employee slicer, and our week slicer. So I'm going to rename this to slicer, right? And I'm going to basically select all these. I'm going to go group, and I'm going to title these as our slicers. And you know, it's really good to just kind of get this kind of stuff nice and cleaned up just because it looks good. The other thing I'm going to do right here is I'm going to move these down into the report measures because we're using them in the report, and I'm going to organize them. So I'm going to go back over here, and I am going to go into model view, and I'm going to set their home table as report measures one more time. Okay, and then I'm going to set their home value right here as tooltip. Tooltip. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and let's set that right here. here, right here. Okay. All right, so there we go. That is nice and organized. Okay, now we are at the part of this where we actually get to build out some of our stuff. And one thing I don't like when they show a little border right here, so I'm going to go back over to slicers, location slicer, border. Of course, we don't have anything on. There we go. Okay, so now we need to actually kind of start to build out our actual matrix right here that's going to contain the weekly schedule. Okay, so how we're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and we're going to insert in a matrix. And here is the matrix right here. If we go ahead and we expand this out. Okay. What we're going to want in the columns is we're going to want the weekday names. So I'll move this over here. Right, so we now have our actual like weekday names. If you notice, they're not in a sort order, so we need to go through and we need to fix that. So I'm going to go back into table view. I'm going to go into the date dimension table. I'm going to select here, and then I am going to go right here, and I'm going to go sort by column, and I'm going to go sort by weekday number. Okay, so I will go right. Oh, that's the other one, sorry. I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to go sort by, and I'm going to go weekday number. And I'm going to do the same because I think I forgot to. If we look at this, I think if we notice that these aren't in order, right? So if I unselect something right here, I think if you'll notice, right, these are in alphabetical order instead of month order. So we'll go through and we'll sort these by month number right here. Okay, so there we are. We now fixed our sort order. So there we go. We now have our sort order. Okay, next thing I am going to do is I am going to go ahead and I am going to start kind of building out my other stuff. So I'm now going to bring over my employee name, right, into my rows. So there's all my employees. Okay, then I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to bring in my location name right here. So here's my locations, and when I expand this, right, I now have all my employees that are now working there. Okay, finally, right below there, I'm then going to bring in my shift name. So if we go all the way over here, and I go right over here, and I bring in my shift name, just like that, if I expand right here, I will now get a shift name. Now, the shift also needs a sort order because if you notice, these aren't in time. So let's go ahead and let's fix that. So I'm going to go over into my shifts dimensional data. I'm going to select here, and I'm going to go sort by shift ID. And now when I go here, if you notice, they're all in a nice, pretty order. One thing you might notice, though, is that we're not getting a row for every single column. One way for us to fix that is for us to bring in the hours into values. And what you should notice is we now should actually get that popping in, unless someone has never actually worked that. Okay, let's go ahead and let's start building. Okay, so first things first, what we need to do is we need to change this from a count of hours to we need to just say do not summarize. So we'll go right here and we will go count of hours, and it's not going to want to do that, which is very frustrating. So let's think through this a little bit. Okay. So I am going to go ahead and I am going to create a measure that's going to be a sum of hours. So I'm going to get rid of that, and I am going to, oh, actually I already did, dimension data, so we'll bring that on over right here. And there we go. So now we have a row populating over for every single hour. Okay, now that we have a row populating over for every single hour, we now need to actually get the count of like the total number of hours that the person's working. So I'm going to create a new measure in here, and I'm going to title this working hours. And right here, I'm going to take a count, and I'm going to go a count of, I'm going to go a count of the fact data, and I'm going to go shift ID, right? So I'm going to go count, and then I'm going to go shift ID. And that's the wrong table, so I'm going to go back right here. I'm going to go fact, shift ID. There we go. Okay, so now I've got a count right here, and if I bring this in, what you'll now see, right, is so if, for example, someone's actually scheduled to work at a given location, if we expand here, right, they'll pop up. Okay, now we don't necessarily want each one of these calendars popping all the way up, so we're gonna do something kind of fancy. We're gonna go ahead and we're going to use visual calculations. So a visual calculation is something that's in DAX, and it allows you to use the columns within the visual to actually define a calculation. So I'm going to click back into this, and I'm going to go over here to home. I'm going to go new calculation. Now, this new calculation, I'm going to title it visible, or I'm just going to title it like scheduled, okay? And what I'm going to do is I am going to use some variables, and I'm going to go var shift block equals, and I'll say if the shift hours equals the working hours, right, then return 1, else return 0, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to return a hours worked message, which should be var hours. Well, actually, first, let's go ahead and let's return this shift block. So I'll go return shift block right here. I'll click OK. So now if you notice, if the person is not scheduled, right, or if they are scheduled, it returns 0, 0, 0, and then if they are scheduled, it returns 1. Okay, but up here at these totals, it's still returning, you know, kind of absolutely nothing. So let's go ahead and let's fix that. So let's go and let's create an if statement, and we'll go if, and we'll go our return message, and we'll go if is at level, and we'll go if it's at level, we'll go, because we want the hours, so we want name 2, right, because that's the hours. Then let's return the shift block, else let's return, and we'll create a measure up here of our like hour measure or hour message. We'll set this equal to a blank string, and we'll go hour message, and we'll close that, and then we'll go right here and we'll update this to return message. Okay. All right, now that we've gone ahead and done that, we can now go in and we can put in the A here, and if we check that, and return message is not a valid table or variable name. So let's go back to this. Let's go edit calculation. It should be returning this, but it looks like I misspelled something. Okay, so let's take a look at what it's doing now, right? So now, if we look at this, it's now returning the A right here, and that's returning 0 and 0 right here. So let's go ahead and let's make that be something more useful. So we're going to say if working hours is blank, right? So we'll go back, we'll go is blank, working hours, okay, then we will return the string no hours. Else we will return, we'll go hours, and we'll go working hours. and this. Okay, and let's go ahead and check that. And I had a DAX error, and if we go and look, what did I do wrong here? I didn't close my if statement, so there we go. All right, so now what you can see is we can see Balboa Park has 23 hours scheduled, right? And they are, who's working there? So we have kind of all of these employees working. So if we collapse this, right, we now have our total hours. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide these columns in Visual Calcs. So in Visual Calcs, you can do that by clicking here. So right here, we now have our Balboa Park. And then if we expand this, we now can actually see where people are scheduled, right? So this person right here is scheduled, Alexander is scheduled for 5 hours, you know, and they're looking pretty good. Okay, so now we need to set some formatting options right here. And if we collapse Balboa Park, we can start to see our shifting. So let's go and let's configure some of these formatting options because we need to make this look pretty. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to search for color, right? And I'm going to go and I'm going to turn off the alternate row color. So now they're all white. Then I'm going to go and turn off well, actually I'll leave the totals on. But when we expand this, right, we currently have all of these zeros, right, coming through. So let's go ahead and let's update this so we can't see that. So I'm going to search for conditional formatting, or like for specific cell elements probably. And here I have my conditional formatting. If I just turn on background right here, you'll see we're kind of getting an FX. Now, conditional formatting is kind of tricky with Visual Calcs. So one of the things that it's really good, or is probably a best practice, is to again use your measures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new measure in here. I'm going to title this measure scheduled block color. Okay, I'm going to go if, and I will go logical test is going to be my total working hours equals 1. Then I want you to return the pink color, so I'll go pink color. If not, and I'll want it to return white. And the hex code for white is FFF. So I will go right here, and I'll have this. So this will return now a hex color code. And if I take this, I can now go ahead and I'll move this into my analysis measures, or into my report measures, and then into color. So I'll go right here, and then I'll go back into model view, and I'll expand my colors, right? And right here, I will go shift block color right here. And we will give that a display folder of colors. Okay. All right. So now we have this. Now we can go ahead and we can use that. So I can go field value, base hit on, and I can go into report measures, and I can go into colors, and I can go schedule block color. And now when I click OK, you'll now notice that now the background color is up to date. So if we unselect this, you can see it's now highlighting where the person's actually working. I can now do the same on the font color, field value, and I can now go right here, analysis measures, colors, pink color. Or I won't go pink color, I'll go scheduler block color. Okay, and then right now that's now kind of starting to look like a color. So let's go through and let's set some more formatting options on this matrix. So let's go grid, and we'll turn on both our grid lines, right, and we'll update that. And here they don't necessarily have the same FX colors. So let's go in and let's look at our text color, and we'll steal that hex code, and we will update all of these to that color. So we'll go here, we'll update this here, we'll update this here, and that's a little too gray, so we'll go lighter, and we'll take this hex code, And we'll now go right here. Okay, so this is now starting to look pretty good, right? So we now have the Balboa Park, their like the employee name, and so on and so forth. Now, I don't really want this saying name, so I'm going to go here and I'm going to just put a space in here. So now it doesn't say that. And so now we can actually kind of see this coming through. If I now expand this, you can see this starting to come through. One thing I don't like right away, or that I'm noticing with my visual calc, is that if this is completely collapsed, it's not actually kind of displaying anything. It needs to be expanded. So we need to kind of figure out what is going on there. And it's probably because of the font color formatting, and we can check that by going copy and then copy value, right? And then if we go in and we go into Notepad and paste this, you can see right here, right? So it is returning text. So it's our conditional formatting is returning something wrong here. So I think we need to go and we need to update our conditional formatting a little bit better. So if you remember, we are using right here, we were using this right here. I'm going to copy this measure. I'm going to go new measure, and I'm going to change it to schedule block text color right here. And so then I will go like right here, and I'll write an additional if statement, and I'll go if count, and I'll go count of employee name, right? And I'll say is greater than 1. Then let's return text color right here, and I will go and I will make sure that my font color is set to my text color right here. Yes, scheduler block text, and I'll click OK. And what you'll now see is that now when I expand this, right, I now can see the actual like shift coming through here. Okay, one other final thing here that I'm just noticing, right, is that this is also still coming up gray, and then right here it's coming up pink. So it still isn't quite right. So let's try going. Let's change this to shift and see what that does. So let's go shift name greater than 1. And there we go. So now it's looking much better. Now we have no hours, right? And then if we expand this, here we go, we get our pink. Okay, well, let's try to figure out what's going on here. See how this one is coming in pink right here, so that's got to be some of our conditional formatting. So they do have 1 hour, but I see, but they only have 1 shift name coming through. So that, how do we fix that? Okay, let's think through this. So which is why it's turning pink. So let's go and let's look at our shift block color, our schedule block color. Okay, so we have if working hours equals 1, then return pink color, else return white. So then let's go ahead and let's add one more criteria on here, which is that our shift hours has to equal 1. So we'll go and we'll go shift hours equals 1. And now when we run this, okay, so we're still getting our blocks, but when we collapse this, it's not highlighting. So that's looking good. Okay, so we just need to update now our shift block text color to the same thing. So we need to go and shift block color equals 1. Okay, and what did I do there? Oh, I returned a color, so we need to go and shift hours equals 1. Just like that, look, if you look, so we now have our like 1 hour, right? So let's go back over here, and if we expand it, there we go. We now can see Charlotte shift. Okay, so let's go through and let's now clean up a few final items. So the first item that we want to clean up is these zeros. So I'm going to use a formatting string on the visual calc to do this. So I think we can do this right here. So we're returning our shift block right here. So let's go format, right? And then the value that I'm going to want it to format in is going to be with just zeros. And let's see if that fixes it. Right, oh, now it has 2. So let me go back to this and I'll go edit this calculation. I'll go right there. Right, and so there we go. Now it's coming through really nicely. Right, so that's looking really good. Okay, so the other thing we want to do is if we have multiple locations, we want to separate them in the matrix. So let's go blank, and we'll add in a blank row here. Okay, that's looking good. All right, so now we have Balboa Park, and if we now expand Balboa Park, here's all of our workers, and then if we expand this, nice. All right, so that is how you can create a schedule in Power BI. So let's just test this out. All right, so right now I've got January. If I select a week, here we go, and here's all of our locations, right, with data for that week. And if I expand this, I can now actually view when all my employees are working. All right, so that right there, that's how we build out our weekly schedule. So finally, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to publish this. So I'm going to hit save. And, oh, what just happened there? Oh no. What just happened? My conditional formatting broke when I hit save. Okay, so let's go back. And why did you schedule block text? That seems to be a little bit of an error. What? Let's exit out of this. So let's go back over to here and let's go home and let's publish this up. And we'll see if this is the same in the service. So let's let this load. And we will then open it up in the web browser. So let's open. And we'll give it a second. You guys don't need to see my login. Oh no, it broke our text conditional formatting. So let's go quickly fix that. So I'm gonna go back over here, and I'm gonna select a week, right? Okay, let's go see how we can fix this. Okay, so let's go back over here, and our schedule block text. Okay, apparently this just conked out. So we'll go back over here, right? And we'll go back over to our schedule block color, and we'll copy this. We'll go schedule block text. We'll set U equal to this. We'll go OK. And now if we expand you down, okay, so now you're at least returning the pink, right? And let's go find someone that actually has some pink color coming through. Okay, there we go. And that seems to have fixed it. And if this is all now fully collapsed, okay, we still have that one piece. So we now need to add that back in. So we need to go if, and the logical test would be count of shift name greater than 1, then we want it to return, and we'll just have it return black because that's what it's returning anyway, right? Else return white, and then we'll close this right here. And the black hex code is going to be, and I really should remember this, but I never can. So we'll go back. It's going to be 00000. Same way this. So we'll go right there. Okay. So there we go. So now let's just confirm that this is actually working, and it looks like it is. Okay. So now we'll hit save, publish it back up. We'll replace the report. All right, and here we are. Now, again, if we uncheck our week scheduler, here is all of our work. And we can go through, we can collapse here, and if we roll over, look, it tells me the date range. And if we expand this, right, we can see who's actually working. All right, so that's how you build a schedule in Power BI. Let me go move myself over to the corner so you can see the full dashboard. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. It took a fair amount of time to make, so thank you for watching. All right, bye.